I was folding my favorite blue blazer into my suitcase when Tyler appeared in my bedroom doorway. It was past 10 at night, and he should have been asleep an hour ago. But there he stood in his dinosaur pajamas, his face pale under the hallway light, his small hands gripping the doorframe like he needed it to hold him up. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" I asked, setting down the blazer. "Bad dream?" He shook his head slowly, his eyes darting toward the hallway before he stepped inside and quietly closed the door behind him. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Tyler wasn't the type of kid who crept around or closed doors. He was always open, always loud, always bouncing off walls with energy. "Mom," he whispered, climbing onto my bed. His voice was so small I had to lean closer to hear him. "I need to tell you something, but you can't let Dad know I told you." My heart started beating faster. "Tyler, you can tell me anything. You know that." He looked down at his hands, picking at a loose thread on my comforter. When he finally spoke, his words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in for too long and they were burning him from the inside. "Daddy has a lover, and when you travel, they're going to take all your money." The room tilted. I actually felt it tilt, like the floor had turned into water beneath me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My 10-year-old son just said those words. Those actual words. "What?" I finally managed. "Tyler, what are you talking about?" His eyes filled with tears. 3 nights ago, I got up to get water. Dad was in his office with the door almost closed, but not all the way. He was on the phone with someone. He called them V. He said, "We just need to wait until she's gone for the full week. Then we move the money like we planned." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Keith, my husband of 11 years, the man who made me coffee every morning, who kissed my forehead before bed, who told me just yesterday how proud he was of my career success. "Are you sure that's what you heard?" I asked, hating how my voice shook. Tyler nodded miserably. "And yesterday his phone was on the kitchen counter when he was in the shower. A text came in from someone saved as just the letter V. I saw it, Mum. It said, 'Are you sure about the account numbers? We can't mess this up.'" My mind was racing backward through the past few months, seeing everything differently now. Keith suggesting I add him to my business account for emergencies. Keith encouraging me to take this Seattle trip even though he usually hated when I traveled. Keith asking so many questions about my investment portfolio, about my retirement accounts, about the life insurance policy my company provided. Oh God. The papers. Last month, Keith had brought home some documents. He said they were updated insurance forms, that we both needed to sign them, that it was just routine paperwork. I'd been exhausted from a long day at work, and I'd signed them without reading carefully. I trusted him completely. "Mom?" Tyler's voice pulled me back. "Are you mad at me for telling you?" "No, baby, no." I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight while my mind spun in circles. "You did exactly the right thing. Thank you for being brave enough to tell me." But inside I was falling apart. How long had this been going on? Who was this V person? How much of my money had Keith already taken? How much did he plan to take? Tyler fell asleep in my bed that night, curled against my side like he used to do when he was little. I lay there in the dark, listening to Keith's footsteps in the hallway, hearing him pause outside the bedroom door. The door handle turned slightly, then stopped. He moved on to his office. My husband, the father of my child, was planning to rob me blind. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Keith's face, heard Tyler's words, felt the ground disappearing beneath my feet. At 5 in the morning, I made my decision. I called my boss as soon as it was a reasonable hour. "I have a family emergency," I told him. "I can't make the Seattle conference." When I told Keith over breakfast, something flashed across his face. It was fast, barely a second, but I saw it. Panic. Real, genuine panic. Then it was gone, replaced by concern. "Is everything okay?" he asked, reaching for my hand across the table. "What happened?" I looked at his hand on mine. The same hand that had held mine at our wedding. The same hand that had held Tyler when he was born. The same hand that was apparently planning to destroy our entire life. Everything's fine, I lied, pulling my hand away to grab my coffee. Just some things I need to handle here first. I saw his jaw tighten. Just slightly. Just enough. The next morning, I dropped Tyler off at school and drove straight to meet Bridget Chen at a coffee shop across town. We'd been roommates in college, best friends who'd promised to always have each other's backs. After graduation, she'd become a private investigator, while I'd gone into marketing. We'd drifted apart over the years, but I knew she was the only person I could trust with this. "Laura, you look terrible," she said when she saw me. "My husband is planning to steal all my money," I said flatly. "Maybe worse." I told her everything Tyler had heard, everything I'd noticed, everything that now seemed like red flags I'd been too blind to see. Bridget listened without interrupting, taking notes on her phone. "Those papers you signed," she said when I finished. "Do you still have copies?" I nodded. "They're in the filing cabinet at home. Keith insisted we keep copies of everything. Get them to me today. Don't let Keith know you're looking for them." She leaned forward. "Laura, I need you to act completely normal around him. Can you do that?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Every time I look at him, I feel sick." "You have to try. If he suspects you know something, he might accelerate whatever he's planning." She squeezed my hand. "I'm going to start surveillance today. I'll find out who this V person is and what they're really planning." That afternoon, while Keith was supposedly at the gym, I searched the filing cabinet. I found the papers I'd signed buried under months of utility bills and Tyler's school forms. My hands shook as I read them. They weren't insurance documents. They were power of attorney forms. Legal papers that would give Keith complete control over all my finances, my property, my assets, if I became incapacitated or died. I'd signed away everything without even reading it. I took photos of every page and sent them to Bridget. Then I kept searching. In the back of Keith's desk drawer, hidden under old tax returns, I found a folder with my name written on the tab. Inside were printouts about untraceable poisons, articles about accidental deaths during business travel, and details about my life insurance policy, the one that would pay out nearly $1 million. There was also a handwritten timeline on a yellow legal pad. It started 6 months ago and ended with this week's dates circled in red, the dates of my Seattle trip. I took pictures of everything with shaking hands. Then I heard the garage door opening. I shoved everything back exactly as I'd found it and ran upstairs just as Keith walked in. "Hey, honey," he called out. "Great workout. I'm going to shower." "Okay," I shouted back, my voice somehow steady even though I was falling apart inside. That night at dinner, Keith was unusually chatty. He asked about my day, told funny stories about people at his gym, complimented the pasta I'd made. He was being the perfect husband, the man I'd fallen in love with. But I kept seeing that folder, those poison articles, that timeline ending with my trip. "I've been thinking," I said carefully, testing him. "Maybe I should reschedule the Seattle conference for 2 weeks from now instead. Give myself more time to prepare." Keith's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. For just a second, his whole face changed. Relief flooded across it, so obvious I wondered how I'd never noticed his tells before. "That's probably smart," he said, his voice a little too enthusiastic. "No need to rush these things." 2 days later, Bridget called me. "I've been following Keith. He's been meeting with a woman at a coffee shop downtown." "But Laura, their meetings don't look romantic. They look like business meetings." "What do you mean?" "Lots of paperwork, laptops, serious conversations. This doesn't look like an affair. It looks like they're planning something." The next day, I followed Keith myself. I watched from my car as he met with a young woman, maybe late 20s, professional looking with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had papers spread across the table between them, and Keith was pointing at something on her laptop screen. After Keith left, I followed the woman to an apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. Before I could talk myself out of it, I got out of my car and approached her in the parking lot. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you V?" She spun around, her eyes going wide. But she didn't look guilty or defensive. She looked sad. "You're Laura," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Who are you? What are you planning with my husband?" She glanced around the parking lot nervously. "Not here. Your husband is more dangerous than you know." She pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand. "Meet me tomorrow at this address. 10 in the morning. Come alone. And make sure Keith doesn't know." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing there with her card clutched in my shaking hand. Vanessa Cole, forensic accountant. I barely slept that night. Keith's arm was draped across my waist like always, but it felt like a chain now. Every breath he took made my skin crawl. I kept thinking about Vanessa's words. "Your husband is more dangerous than you know." At 9:30 the next morning, I told Keith I had a doctor's appointment. Just a routine checkup. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Feel better," he said. Not even asking what the appointment was for. The address Vanessa gave me was a small office building near downtown. I found her on the 3rd floor in a cramped office with filing cabinets lining every wall. She was already making coffee when I arrived. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "I know this must be confusing." "Confusing?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. "My son told me my husband has a lover who's planning to steal my money. Then I find out you're not his lover, you're an accountant. So what are you? What is this?" Vanessa sat down heavily. 6 months ago, Keith hired me. He told me his wife was hiding money, that you were planning to divorce him and take everything. He said he needed help protecting his assets, making sure he got what was rightfully his in case you tried to screw him over. My mouth fell open. "That's insane! I wasn't planning anything like that." "I know that now," Vanessa said quietly. "At first I believed him. He was convincing, had documents that seemed to support his story. I started doing what he asked, tracing your accounts, finding out where your money was, helping him understand your financial situation." "So you were helping him rob me? I thought I was helping a man protect himself from a dishonest wife." She looked down at her hands. But then things started feeling wrong. Keith wasn't asking the normal questions someone asks during a divorce preparation. He was asking about your life insurance policies, about how long investigations typically take when someone dies unexpectedly during business travel, about whether banks freeze accounts immediately after a death, or if there's a window. My blood turned to ice. "I started digging deeper," Vanessa continued. "I found searches on his computer about untraceable poisons, about accidental deaths, about offshore accounts that can't be tracked. That's when I knew this wasn't about divorce. This was about something much worse." She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen were screenshots of Keith's search history, emails to suspicious offshore accounts, and call logs from a burner phone showing dozens of calls to a contact listed only as T. "Who's T?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm working on it." She pulled up another file. "Laura, there's something else you need to know. 3 years before Keith married you, he was married to another woman. Her name was Jennifer Walsh." "What?" Keith had never mentioned being married before. Never. "What happened to her?" "She died during a hiking trip. Fell from a cliff. It was ruled an accident." Vanessa's eyes met mine. Her life insurance paid out $400,000. Keith was the beneficiary. He was also the only witness to her death. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. I contacted the detective who worked that case. Vanessa said, "He's retired now, but he agreed to meet with us. He never felt right about closing it as an accident, but he couldn't prove anything else." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a diner across from Detective Leonard Brooks. He was in his 60s, grey-haired and tired-looking, but his eyes were sharp. "Jennifer was an experienced hiker," he told me. The trail where she fell was rated easy. Weather was perfect, no reason for her to slip. He stirred his coffee slowly. Keith's story had inconsistencies, small ones. The kind you notice but can't quite build a case on. Why didn't you push harder? I asked. No evidence, no witnesses, and Keith seemed genuinely devastated. He cried during the interview, talked about how much he loved her. Brooks looked at me hard, but her best friend told me something after the funeral. Jennifer had confided that she was planning to leave Keith. She'd discovered he was in debt and had been secretly taking money from her accounts. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put down my coffee cup. This is exactly what he's doing to me. The pattern fits, Brooks agreed. Marry someone with money. Gain their trust. Get access to their finances. Then stage an accident and collect the insurance. But why hasn't he done anything yet? I asked. We've been married 11 years. Your assets are bigger, Vanessa said. More complex. He needed more time to position everything correctly. And he needed the perfect opportunity. Seattle, I whispered. My business trip was supposed to be his window. Brooks nodded grimly. A week away from home, multiple flights, layovers in different cities, lots of opportunities for accidents. I thought about Tyler overhearing Keith's phone call. About the timeline ending with my trip dates. About how enthusiastic Keith had been about me going to this particular conference. My husband had been planning to kill me. That evening, I went home and cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Keith talked about his day, asked about my doctor's appointment. I told him everything was fine, just routine blood work. He smiled and said that was good, that he needed me healthy. I wanted to scream. Over the next 2 days, I moved like a ghost through my own life. I smiled at Keith, made his coffee, kissed him goodbye when he left for the gym, and every second, I was screaming inside. Bridget installed tiny cameras throughout the house while Keith was out. In the living room, the kitchen, his office. I hated doing it. Hated that my own home had become a trap. But I needed proof. Real, solid proof that would hold up in court. On the third day, Vanessa called. I found T. His name is Tommy Wilcox. He has a record for fraud and forgery. And Laura, he was Jennifer's former business partner before she died. My stomach dropped. So he's been helping Keith for years. It looks that way. Detective Brooks is going back through Jennifer's case now with this new information. That night, I made a decision. I called Keith into the living room where I was looking at my laptop. I rescheduled the Seattle trip, I told him. I'm leaving in 3 days. His face transformed. For just a moment, pure excitement flashed across his features before he caught himself and arranged his expression into something more appropriate. That's great, honey, he said. I know how important this conference is for your career. I'll be gone for the full week this time, I added, watching him carefully. I'll miss you. He kissed the top of my head. But I'm proud of you. That night, I pretended to be asleep. Through barely opened eyes, I watched Keith carefully take my phone from the nightstand. He scrolled through my emails, checked my calendar, confirmed my flight details. Then he quietly put it back and slipped out of the room. The cameras caught everything. The next morning, the footage showed Keith in his office, door closed, on his phone. Bridget had managed to tap his line. We heard every word. It's happening, Keith said to whoever was on the other end. She leaves in 3 days. You have your contact at the airport ready? A male voice responded. Yeah, he'll handle it during her layover in Denver. Quick, clean, untraceable, heart attack. Everyone will think it's natural. And the money? I can start moving it the day after. 50-50 split like we agreed. Once the insurance comes through, we're set. 4 years of planning finally paying off. I listened to the recording 3 times, each time feeling more numb. 4 years. He'd been planning this for 4 years. But then I noticed something else on the camera footage. Keith going into Tyler's room when our son was at school. searching through Tyler's backpack, his desk drawers, under his mattress. He was looking for something. He suspected Tyler had told me something. My baby was in danger. I made the hardest phone call of my life. My sister Amy lived in Boston, and she agreed to take Tyler immediately. I told Keith that Tyler had been selected for a special science camp, a last-minute opening that was too good to pass up. "That's wonderful," Keith said, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. "When does he leave?" "Tomorrow morning. I'm driving him to the airport. I'll miss the little guy, but what an opportunity." Keith smiled. "And it'll give us some alone time before your trip." The way he said alone time made my skin crawl. I held Tyler tight at the airport the next morning. "I need you to stay with Aunt Amy for a while," I whispered in his ear. "And I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that for me?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to be okay, Mum?" "I'm going to be fine," I promised, praying it was true. That night, Keith was overly affectionate. He made my favorite dinner, poured wine, talked about plans for when I got back from Seattle, about a vacation we should take, about how lucky we were, about our future together, a future he was planning to have without me. I wore a wire. Detective Brooks was parked outside in an unmarked van, listening to everything. At 11 o'clock, I went upstairs and pretended to sleep. Keith came to bed an hour later. I kept my breathing slow and steady, felt him watching me in the dark. Then his phone vibrated. He slipped out of bed and went downstairs. Through the wire, Brooks heard everything. "Forget the airport plan," Keith whispered into his phone. "It's too risky now. I think she knows something. We need to do it tonight. Here, in the house. Make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Come over at 2 a.m. Bring what we discussed." I had 3 hours before my husband tried to kill me. I lay in bed, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Keith could hear it from downstairs. The wire was still on, pressed against my skin under my pajama top. I heard Detective Brooks' voice through the tiny earpiece he'd given me earlier that day. "Laura, stay calm. We're coming in now. Officers are surrounding the house. Do not move until I give you the signal." Keith came back upstairs. I forced my breathing to stay slow and even as he climbed into bed beside me. He lay there in the dark, and I could feel him staring at me. Minutes felt like hours. At 1:45, I heard a car pull up outside. Quiet footsteps on the driveway. Keith slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I heard the back door open. "You brought it!" Keith's voice, barely a whisper. "Yeah, a man's voice, Tommy. But are you sure about this? Doing it in the house is messy. Too many variables. She knows something. I can feel it. We can't wait until Seattle now. It has to be tonight. What about the kid? He's away at some camp. It's just her. We make it look like a robbery. You came in through the back. She surprised you. Things went wrong. I was asleep upstairs, didn't hear anything until it was too late. And my payment? You'll have it within 48 hours. $500,000, just like we agreed. But we do this now, Tommy." She's getting suspicious, asking questions. "I saw her going through my desk yesterday. The cameras I installed caught her." My blood froze. Keith had cameras too. He'd been watching me just like I'd been watching him. "Go upstairs," Keith said. "I'll stay down here. Establish my alibi. Make it quick." I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Male. Coming closer. Then Detective Brooks' voice crackled in my earpiece. "Now, Laura, roll off the bed and get down." I rolled onto the floor just as my bedroom door flew open. But it wasn't Tommy who came through. It was 3 police officers with guns drawn. "Police, get on the ground!" Downstairs, I heard shouting, crashing, Keith yelling. More police officers stormed through the house. I stayed on the floor, shaking, as an officer helped me up. "You're safe now, Mrs. Bennett. You're safe." They brought Keith upstairs in handcuffs. His face when he saw me standing there, alive and surrounded by police, was something I'll never forget. Shock, rage, and then, finally, fear. "You were awake," he said quietly. "You heard everything." "I heard everything," I confirmed. "For days now. Every phone call, every plan, everything." Tommy Wilcox was arrested trying to run out the back door. In his car, police found a gun, rope, and a bottle of pills that would later be identified as a lethal dose of sedatives. Detective Brooks found more evidence in Keith's office, a detailed plan of how he'd kill me and stage the scene, forged documents that would have given him access to all my accounts, and most damning, a journal going back 4 years, documenting every step of his plan. But the worst discovery came 2 days later. Vanessa called me, her voice shaking. "Laura, we got the full autopsy report on Jennifer Walsh. They're exhuming her body." The original investigation missed something. She had traces of the same sedative Tommy was carrying in his system. She didn't fall from that cliff. She was already dead when Keith pushed her body over. Keith had murdered his first wife, and he'd almost murdered me. The trial took 8 months. Keith and Tommy both tried to blame each other, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the cameras, the journal, Tommy's testimony once he realized Keith was throwing him under the bus. Everything. Keith got life in prison without parole for Jennifer's murder and the attempted murder of me. Tommy got 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Couldn't walk through rooms where Keith had planned my death. Tyler and I moved to Boston, closer to my sister. He started therapy, and slowly, the scared look in his eyes began to fade. One evening, 6 months after the trial, Tyler and I were making dinner together in our new apartment. He was telling me about his science project, laughing about something his teacher said, being a normal 10-year-old kid again. "Mum," he said suddenly, looking up at me, "I'm glad I told you about what I heard." I knelt down and hugged him tight. "You saved my life, Tyler. You were so brave. Are we going to be okay now?" I looked around our small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours. It was safe. It was real. "Yeah, baby," I said. "We're going to be more than okay." And for the first time in months, I actually believed it.